Call this work session meeting of the San Marcos City Council to order. Today is March 18th. The time is 3 o'clock. Ms. Trevino, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Rodriguez.
Here.
Mr. Saul Gonzalez. Ms. Garza. Mayor Houston.
Here.
Mr. Scott.
Here.
Mr. Mendoza.
Here.
And Mr. Lorenzo Gonzalez. We have a quorum present.
All right. Citizen comment time period. The City Council hears citizen comments at work sessions, workshops, and regular meetings. There is a sign-up process for this. You may speak once during the citizen comment time period and may not yield time to others. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. You'll see the timer on the screen. When it's in the yellow, you have less than 20 seconds. And when it's red, your time to speak is up. We do endeavor to ensure that meetings are conducted in a courteous manner. Ms. Trevino, I have one person on the list,
Yes.
and that's Mr. Baker, who's joining us remotely.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, there he is.
That is a very loud train, so I'm going to go inside. All right. Yes, my name is Maxwell Baker. I'm the founder of the San Marcos Civics Club. And today, as I have talked to you many times at this point, we are continuing to push for our Tenants' Bill of Rights. You can see behind me, we have a brand new spanking flyer calling our community neighbors to action. We've also started a petition to have San Marcos residents sign to help, further push for the Tenants' Bill of Rights. We really appreciate the meetings we've had with staff and the fact that council already adopted this endeavor into their strategic initiatives. And so now we would just want to make sure that there's robust community outreach and education around what this means and what we can actually hope to achieve with this. So again, make sure to check out our flyer and our petition for our community members. Also, I wanted to kind of share, I've seen a lot of activism going around in our community, which is lovely. It's frustrating, some of the things we're having to get active about. But I've seen lots of talk online about concerns around the data centers and our water. And so I just wanted to also remind people that the Civics Club is here to help facilitate some of those conversations, to help community members understand, what some effective means of activism can be. So check out our Linktree, which is, here on that little QR code there. You can find all sorts of resources that we've already uploaded, including a How to Be an Activist guide that educates people on how to sign up to speak at these meetings, how to reach out to city staff, how to organize their neighbors. And a big part of the Tenants' Bill of Rights is the right to organize, right? That's number 6 on our bullet list there. So we know how empowering it can be when citizens step up and kind of take control and, really show activism on the outside to power activism on the inside, from you on council, from our city staff that supports pushing for a Tenants' Bill of Rights and other, important sustainability issues in town and things like that. So thank you all so much, as always, for the hard work on this, and we look forward to the continued discussions.
Okay, and that closes out citizen comment time period. Next, we have our presentations. Okay, then we'll look at number 1.
Number 1, receive a staff presentation, hold discussion on the downtown area plan implementation.
Ms. Reyes?
Today, you'll receive an update on the implementation of the city's downtown area plan. The plan was adopted in fall of 2023 and guides the long-term decision-making of downtown over the next 20 years. The creation of the plan was a collaborative effort between staff, the community, and the Downtown Stakeholder Committee to shape our vibrant downtown. This afternoon, we'll present an overview of implementation progress to date, current projects underway, future projects on the horizon, and an overview of resources needed for implementation. Creating the implementation strategy was a collaborative effort between a variety of city departments to ensure that implementation occurs holistically and collaboratively. We're excited to work towards the downtown vision over the coming years by identifying improvements, investments, and opportunities to strengthen downtown. I will now turn it over to Andrea Villalobos, Assistant Director of Planning, to give today's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reyes. Andrea Villalobos, Assistant Director of Planning, happy to be here this afternoon. I'll be presenting on our downtown area plan implementation strategy. And as Ms. Reyes mentioned, the plan was adopted in fall of 2023, following community input, and includes 75 recommendations across 7 different topics. The boundaries of the plan can be seen here on the screen, with the furthest extent being Texas State University, the southern extent being the railroad tracks, and then Moore Street and North CM Allen Parkway. Implementation of the plan will occur over the next 20 years, so it's got a pretty long horizon. And to track progress, staff developed a multi-departmental report to understand successes, track current and future projects as well, and understand the resources that were needed to be successful. A really big thanks to all of the departments who put this together. Many of them are here, including our Main Street and CVB division, who does a lot of the legwork on this plan. And so most recommendations actually require coordination between all of our different departments. So while I'm here presenting this plan as the planning department, it really is a collaborative effort. To be successful, many of the resources that were cited by our departments when putting this report together included funding and staffing to make this a reality. And many of the recommendations are also driven by private development or through different partnerships as well. So at Visioning, you did receive an overview of the recommendations in the plan. And today, I won't go into all 75 recommendations in the strategy and report. I'm just going to try to highlight a few from each of the 7 topics, and the full report is in your packet. It's also posted online for the public as well. So our first topic is housing, and it includes 11 recommendations focused on encouraging a diverse mix of housing options downtown, and also recognizing that those who live downtown contribute to the vibrancy of the area. This topic also has recommendations which may seem outside of the realm of housing, such as services or amenities and transportation, but these are important to making downtown a choice place to live or also to live nearby. Recent progress on this topic includes the city's acquisition of land for a new downtown fire station, number 1 on MLK Drive, to increase the level of service in downtown and surrounding neighborhoods. So again, it's not a specific housing recommendation, but it does support housing in downtown. The city expanded e-scooter and bike service east of I-35 at Ocarina Springs, further expanding the micromobility network from downtown that helps folks get to and from our downtown area. And while no new housing products have been constructed in downtown in 2024, City Council did approve the use of purpose-built student housing at the intersection of Lindsay and North Street in April. A few initiatives that are currently in progress are our transit plan is in progress and is going to evaluate transit facilities in the downtown. The preservation plan is also underway, which is going to explore recommendations for historic or potentially historic aged properties. The development code will kick off this year and will evaluate amendments to the development code to actually align with our downtown plan. Staff is actually currently working on a fun GIS project, which is a housing inventory update to better track what housing we have downtown and actually all units, conduct analysis and do that over time. And that'll actually help with our strategic housing action plan, which is proposed to be updated in 2025. Furthermore, we actually do have a few housing products that are underway adjacent to the greater downtown area. And that includes a courtyard housing product and a small multi-family product. Those are actually 2 permits that we have in review, both from the permitting side, but also the entitlement side. So that's just near downtown. Looking forward, a few future projects related to this plan is we've got several notable capital improvement projects underway, or CIP for short, that will support our housing recommendations, including, again, the construction of that fire station, and then a significant project to reconstruct South LBJ Drive from Grove to Hopkins Street with improved sidewalk facilities, street, stormwater, water, wastewater, electric, telecom, the whole works. And so this enhanced infrastructure, while again doesn't seem housing related, it actually improves the experience of those who live downtown, as well as visitors or folks who potentially want to live downtown. And then again, while multifamily housing has not been proposed downtown this year in terms of construction, the recent approval of that student housing that council approved could come to fruition in the next few years. And then there is an additional request in review today. Next topic is building form and infill development. So it includes 10 recommendations to guide new development that positively contributes to the downtown experience, the economy, and the sense of place. While downtown is largely built out, new opportunity exists for new development, and so the recommendations in this section are both programmatic, but also physical in nature, so things expecting new development to actually occur and to build. So just a recap on the past couple of years. In 2024, the city code was amended to require that vacant structures board their windows to improve building security, deter broken windows, alleviate further maintenance issues as well. Staff, particularly Main Street, actually maintained an online directory of vacant properties in downtown for sale or lease, and you can actually go check that out now at downtowntx.org. Staff also hosted the Downtown Revitalization Tour in 2023 and 2024 to showcase the opportunities of vacant spaces, and more importantly, to build relationships between the city and the actual property owners as well. One of the successes that came out of this was the Ford Jackman building, which is on Hutchison Street, was one of our featured locations. And that building is actually now 70% leased, which I think is a great success to celebrate. Staff also worked with property owners to install the Legend Has It tour, which is those purple, kind of blue vinyl graphics you might see downtown. We applied those to vacant structures and storefronts, and they actually still exist today as well. Main Street also partnered with a Texas State geography class to complete an assessment of our vacant properties, both in 2022 and in 2024. And that study actually found a reduction in vacant floor commercial spaces on the first floor over that time. So I think that's another great success. In terms of things you might see on our streets, a recent CIP project on Guadalupe Street relocated Aerial Electric underground. And again, you don't think about that related to building form, but actually it helps new buildings meet the development code. And it also helps the aesthetics of that street with all of the electric being underground. For our in-progress projects, staff is working on an education initiative right now to really strengthen communication between our downtown owners on both the recent code changes that have occurred recently adopted by council, but also to educate on some of our responsibilities for business owners regarding sidewalk, and trash, and maintenance of those areas. The conditional use permit subcommittee is also discussing land uses downtown, and we think that will be providing some guidance on potential code amendments in the future regarding uses. Main Street also secured additional funding for the Main Street Incentive Grant, which is used for facade improvements downtown. And then lastly, staff is making significant progress on the Kissing Alley, the design for Kissing Alley, which will convert additional overhead electric underground among other variety of pedestrian areas. And then looking forward into the future on this topic, a few potential projects are, we would like to do a program to facilitate adding art installations to our boarded up windows. While we do require them to be boarded up, we could explore some potential there. A future grant program is another potential project that could actually explore incentivizing tenant finish outs. And that can help business owners get their spaces ready for lease, or property owners and building owners to get that space ready. We'd also like to explore updating the historic design guidelines. The current guidelines are from 1997. We had an amendment to add sustainability to the guidelines in 2014, but this is actually being looked at as part of our preservation plan project right now. And then lastly, staff would like to discuss best practices with some surrounding cities to understand a potential vacant building registration program as well. Alrighty, next topic is multimodal connectivity and parking. And I love this photo of bikes in downtown from 1959 and then about 2022. Multimodal connectivity in this plan has about 14 recommendations. And as the heart of San Marcos, the plan recommends that downtown should really be the place where we're prioritizing walkable, bikeable, and areas that are served by transit. In addition, vehicular parking is also important and will continue to be important downtown, particularly due to downtown's location throughout the city and the region's existing development patterns. Recent progress on this topic, the installation and repair of about 1,500 feet of sidewalk within the downtown boundary in 2024 has been a really great success by our Public Works Department and the city's sidewalk maintenance program. The city also reintroduced e-bikes into our multimodal transportation program, and this also included expanding the e-scooter and e-bike service across 35. It also operates 24/7, which is an enhancement as well. City Council approved an interlocal agreement with the university to further the goal to coordinate the transit systems. And then the city code was updated to include the framework and procedures for establishing and administering a parking benefit district as well. And the last project I wanted to note is a CIP project occurred fairly quickly on Hopkins Street in front of the courthouse, and actually restriped some travel lanes there in front of the courthouse to add a southbound turn lane to really improve vehicular traffic flow. So I just want to make sure that multimodal connectivity is really all modes of transportation downtown as well. In terms of in-progress projects, the Public Works Department is constantly evaluating our sidewalk maintenance and gaps in our sidewalk network. Priority locations are really defined by both the downtown plan, which is a great tool that we now have to use, community input, and then ADA and our paratransit goals. So those are the guys working out and filling in many of those gaps or making those repairs. Staff is also currently analyzing data from that expanded multimodal transportation program to gauge its success. They'll also be discussing it through the transit plan as well. And then lastly, the Parking Advisory Board is drafting a recommendation for parking management that is more comprehensive. That'll actually be presented to City Council in 2025. Looking to the future, a very notable project will kick off this year, which is the update to the Transportation Master Plan, or TMP for short. The TMP will discuss priority transportation facilities downtown and how they connect to the citywide transportation network. In general, there are a variety of CIP projects which directly impact our streets downtown, and funding for those projects is really many years out, and so that's just one of our sort of challenges with streetscapes downtown. Staff would also like to explore the use of camera sensors to help make parking management decisions. And lastly, as we work to improve our transit shelters downtown, there is an opportunity to actually incorporate some art and history panels into there, which is something that a lot of cities have done. So you can actually showcase some of those stories through your infrastructure that you're already working on. Streetscapes. So streetscapes refer both to the pavement of the road, but also the area between the pavement and the front facade of a building. So that top image shows a streetscape really well in terms of the recommendations of this plan. They're one of the primary ways that people experience our downtown as they travel between destinations. And they actually take up a third of all of the land in our downtown. And they're owned by us or potentially by the state, by TxDOT. And so they really serve as a great opportunity for us to actually drive some of those changes in downtown. A few successes. I I mentioned this previously, but Guadalupe Street between MLK and the railroad had some underground electric, some aerial electric that went underground, but it also did some really great improvements to sidewalk, landscaping, irrigation, electric, and pedestrian lighting. If you go and look at the before and after of Google Street View, I think it really tells that story really well. A recent project is staff developed a downtown plant palette in fall of 2024 to guide landscaping downtown and promote native species. This is actually something that's going on now, and Josie and Main Street's team is actually working to install a lot of that. Staff secured a partnership with Texas State for funding and planning support to implement a street art installation on San Antonio Street, which we're also really excited about at San Antonio and Comanche and along that stretch of San Antonio. Our traffic folks actually, in coordination with police, added new traffic cameras at specific locations in downtown to help better monitor traffic. And we also did some changes to our traffic signals as well to give pedestrians a little bit of a head start. So if you press that pedestrian walk sign, you actually get a head start in the crosswalk before vehicles are able to turn. That's actually a big deal for pedestrians if you're walking down there. And then lastly, the Kissing Alley project is at 90% plans. And this is a project we've been talking about for a long time. So we are looking to get really close to going to the next stage. And that's actually a project to reimagine the alley with green infrastructure and also serve as a pilot program for future green alleys. In progress. So staff is, again, constantly evaluating our sidewalks. There is an opportunity for the public to provide feedback on new sidewalks in the downtown area. As I mentioned, the Main Street Department's been hard at work installing our new landscape beds downtown. That incorporates bird, bee, and pollinator plant species. You will see implementation of that street mural I mentioned earlier this year. And then we're also working on our update to the stormwater master plan that's currently in progress. And that'll actually give us some good guidance about identifying some areas where we might have stormwater quality projects downtown, things like rain gardens or other green infrastructure to help improve quality and movement of water. Looking into the future, again, I keep stressing our CIP projects, but a lot of these projects not only improve the electric facilities, but they really make a big difference on how folks experience our downtown area. You can view the full scope of that, and I know Mr. Condor will be doing a full presentation on the CIP, but that really is going to be a big difference in the downtown area, and we'll check off a lot of our boxes on our to-do list. Another new item in this plan is the discussion of gateways, both vehicular, multimodal, and pedestrian gateways. And so staff actually wants to explore this a little bit further these upcoming years. A Texas State class actually did some research for us on this topic for the Main Street division, and so we're going to use that as a starting point to kind of take a lead on that. We're also looking to take the recent plant palette a step further, and we're going to consider that potentially for incorporation into the development code. And so that means it would be applicable for when new development comes into town. They would actually need to be abiding by this document that we've been working on. Public spaces and amenities. So a major asset in the downtown is its adjacency to the riverfront parks and the San Marcos River. And so connections between these areas is really important for downtown vitality. I know the Main Street Division discusses that a lot, is how do we get folks who are at the river to come and shop and spend their money downtown? And so the plan recommends ways that our public spaces can be improved downtown through amenities, new spaces, and then adding particular sustainable infrastructure in those parks. So a few of our successes, staff actually secured grant funding to complete a citywide shade density study. So we know shade is important, especially as you're walking downtown. And the city's urban forester within our parks department has been monitoring trees in the downtown area. She's worked with TxDOT on certain roadways to develop recommendations for future plantings. So I really think that that's great collaboration. As well as recommendations on how to replace failing or dead trees in our downtown tree wells. Shade is not just created by trees, but also awnings or canopies in the downtown. And that can also serve as an important way to get that done if we can't install a tree or a tree well. And so Main Street actually offers an incentive grant for storefront improvements. That includes awnings as well. And so in 2024, a business called My City Locating was actually awarded a grant for an awning. And so that can actually, again, help you stay under shade as you're walking in the downtown area. Staff also did a few, again, pollinator gardens. One of the most recent ones is at the old train depot on Edward Gary Street in 2023. Really great place to check out. And then we also installed these sidewalk medallions on the screen here. They are along C.M. Allen Parkway, on both sides of C.M. Allen Parkway, and they actually help highlight some of the history, facts about San Marcos and the river as well. And so that was a really great collaborative project that we installed a few years ago. All right, in progress. That shade study is kicking off in 2025. A project I haven't talked about too much, but is extremely important, I think, for downtown success and connections to the neighborhoods is our Purgatory Creek CIP project, Phase 1. We have been making a lot of headway, our engineering department is making a lot of headway to acquire the easements and the right-of-way that are needed to make that project come to fruition. We also have our Main Street team secured a 1-to-1 match from our TERS board to expand the existing Main Street incentive grant. What that does is it allows us to serve businesses, serve more businesses at a higher dollar amount. So I think that's another great success. Future projects. One of the big focuses over the next couple of years is actually educational signage. So in other words, as we do a lot of these improvements downtown, we talk about pollinators, we actually want to educate our community about what they are. I touched on this a second ago, but the Purgatory Creek CIP project is an immensely important future project for the downtown. It includes trails, pedestrian lighting, it activates existing open space, and it's also flood mitigation. We also hope to explore some opportunities to partner with existing development or new development to incorporate pocket parks. The downtown plan did actually identify an area of downtown where we don't have any parks, and we did a radius, and we want to make sure that folks live within a certain distance between our parks. An example of this actually was a recent project, an alternative compliance project that actually came to City Council, was approved by City Council. We had a condition in that alternative compliance that project dedicate a small pocket park within their project. So that's a way that we can work with development to get that. The plan also recommended a variety of enhancements to the Eddie Durham Park. In the coming years, we really want to start identifying some funding sources for that to implement those over the next couple years. All right, second to last recommendation is our small business support. So this recommendation really focuses on what we heard from the community, which is diversifying the mix of businesses we have downtown. There's 11 recommendations. And to recap a few of our successes, this is really a lot of work on the Main Street department, but Main Street really consistently works to connect our local market vendors to vacant spaces downtown. So a recent success story was actually the Douglas Smith Soap. They operated a vendor at a lot of our local markets, so they would host a booth. And Main Street actually connected that business owner to a vacant brick and mortar space on South LBJ. And so that space fit their need. They wanted something small. And so that's a really great way that we're trying to make those connections by just interacting with the business owners and having that communication. That includes working with our leasing agents, property owners, prospective businesses to find all of those available places for lease. The Think Big program, which was developed in 2021, is ongoing. It's a program that provides free technical assistance to small businesses. And the program actually has an emphasis on people who identify as Black, Indigenous, people of color, women, and students. And then in summary, Main Street offers a variety of business retention services. That's the Main Street Incentive Grant, Legacy Business Program, the Big Grant, the Think Big program. So we do have a lot of existing programs, but the downtown plan really does outline some of our holes and gaps that we want to have new programs for in the future. In progress. So in 2025, this year, Main Street's actually working to identify and diversify some of the events that we hold. So that includes a broader range of activities, a broader footprint, a broader range of a target market as well. A few things we also have ongoing is our existing program, 1 Million Cups Greater SMTX. It's now in its 4th year of creation. It supports small businesses with monthly meetings that have business owners who are sharing their experiences and successes, challenges as a business owner. And so this year's focus has been on bringing additional entrepreneurial-minded Texas State students into the program. That's important because that was actually a recommendation in the plan, is that we really need to be connecting our students who graduate here. How can we help them create a business in the town that they graduated in? Last year, the program expanded so that Business Community Lenders of Texas, or BCL for short, is available to provide bridge loans and to help businesses with grant applications. Also, a fun fact is that BCL actually operates in our downtown, which I think is a really great success. They could operate anywhere, but they focus and they have a lease spot in downtown. Another big one we're working on currently is a how-to guide for starting a business downtown. This is actually identified on the Main Street Department's fiscal year 25 annual work plan, so we're excited to get that going. And then lastly, the city recently hired a business retention and expansion coordinator, and so we're really excited about that. It'll contribute immensely to these recommendations as well. Future projects. So looking forward, staff, I've mentioned this a little bit before, but we do have some holes in our programs, and so we really want to explore some new incentive programs to attract the desired business types, support the startup costs for businesses, and then support historically underserved entrepreneurs. So that's a big hole that we'd like to continue to explore. We also want to take a look at the economic development policy to incorporate some downtown-specific recommendations in that. And then lastly, to explore a business retention and expansion program, or BRE. That actually helps support coordination between staff and then our downtown business owners, and it helps us track some of that data over time. And then my last topic is history, art, and culture. So as a recap, we have a new gateway mural installed on MLK Drive. This mural is actually in one of the spots we identified as wanting to have a gateway. Through grant funding in 2023, we also hosted a citywide exhibit with the work of Roberto Rios that was held both downtown and citywide, and so that was a really great opportunity to kind of showcase that art throughout the community. Staff has also been working on a really great art map that can be found at smtxarts.com, and you can go and look at art installations throughout town first and then know where you want to go, or vice versa, so that's a really great program. And then lastly, there was a mural installed at Miss Ollie's store over in the Dunbar neighborhood. That's just outside of downtown, but I think it's a really great opportunity to showcase one of the recommendations in the plan, which is to feature a QR code to actually take you to more information, particularly about history in the downtown area. So if you haven't checked that out, that QR code, you can scan it and it takes you to oral history, which is a really great way to kind of tell that story from the folks who were living there. And so we hope to piggyback off of this and install other historical storytelling over time in the downtown. In progress, staff is exploring a few other mural locations in downtown, including the Mobility Hub and the Price Center. Again, we have our preservation plan, and that's important because it's exploring both educational opportunities, but also the concept of a cultural district in San Marcos. Staff is also collaborating with the Dunbar community to establish a Walk of Fame to highlight important figures and stories. The proposed location of the walk would be the Dunbar Park along the recently installed sidewalk loop, but I think this can be a really great way to piggyback again off of some of the ideas that are happening in other parts of our community. Future projects, that image on the right there is actually a snippet from the art map. So staff is continuing to add that digital component to our existing murals. We also want to implement a history layer within our online map, so not only showcasing the art locations, but where are some of the stories we want to feature. And then again, that preservation plan, one of the big recommendations in the downtown plan is a cultural arts district or a cultural district. And so that is going to take a collaborative effort. Cultural districts are actually reviewed and approved by the Texas Commission on the Arts. And so the preservation plan is going to sort of hopefully set us up to understand how we might be able to do that in the future. Okay, I'm almost done here. So resources needed. I mentioned there are 75 recommendations in this plan, and so I wanted to touch on some of the things that we've identified to help us be successful over the next 20 years. So funding and staff are needed to implement many of the recommendations, and we're really exploring all avenues within the departments to look at grants, to find ways to easily knock out recommendations, with one stone. But with regards to funding, the capital improvement program funds or the bond funds are the primary funding source for a lot of those larger scale projects I mentioned. And you'll receive a more detailed presentation on the CIP in the future. But for example, the reconstruction of South LBJ Drive, which is an area that we really have not had public investment into in terms of the street, that's a major, that project wouldn't be fully funded until 2032, just to give you a time frame. TERS funds can also be leveraged to either support some of these major CIP projects or just as a resource for additional programs which are eligible. So that's a really great tool that can help us do a lot of the things in this plan. Recommendations which require a new incentive program, I talked a lot about. There's just a few things we'd like to do there. They really would require a dedicated funding source or a staff member to help facilitate a lot of those programs to administer. Our sidewalk maintenance and gap infill program is a tremendous resource in downtown in terms of filling in our sidewalk gaps across the community. But it does have limited funds for construction, and so those funds are actually only for the construction or repair of sidewalks. It does not include the funds needed to acquire easements or right-of-way in order to achieve a larger sidewalk. And that's important for downtown as we want to have our largest sidewalks downtown to accommodate the pedestrian traffic. And so that's really kind of one of the barriers we have there. Many recommendations that I talked about discuss beautification, or they require specific maintenance needs such as native landscaping, green alleys, and infrastructure, street trees. All of those require a lot of enhanced maintenance, and we really do require our downtown to really look the best. It's where folks are coming to. So there are opportunities potentially to look at our community enhancement fee or find other avenues to really help with the maintenance of that. And then lastly, private development is a key driver to implementation as well. Private development is the one, developing the private property, but they're also installing the streetscape improvement. So as new development goes in, they are required to install the necessary streetscapes. And so the city does not have to go in and expand that sidewalk or put the electric underground or expand or increase the size of that water line. So they are a really big, major partner in creating a lot of these recommendations and achieving success. And then my last slide here is just next steps. So moving forward, staff plans to continue to identify implementation opportunities. While I'm presenting this today, we're constantly looking on how to get to make this plan come to fruition. And Main Street's really leading a lot of those recommendations and efforts as well. We plan to continuously review our funding opportunities and possibly, again, leveraging those TERS funds is really important. I mentioned quite a few master plans, the transportation master plans, stormwater master plan. So we're going to be coordinating with those master plans to make sure that we're, cross-referencing our recommendations or letting those master plans refine some of our recommendations. We plan to come to you annually to give you a status report, as well as make that report and strategy on the website for our community. And then we're also looking at exploring an online dashboard that's easily accessible by the community. So really just to supplement the PDF document in the packet, but something that folks can actually go in and see that we're actually using this document moving forward. And that concludes my presentation. Myself, and I know a lot of Main Street is here in the audience. If you have any specific questions, we're happy to answer them.
I have one. It is on the, in the economic development section, small business support and future projects. All three of those are listed as medium, and my question is, can we bump explore economic development policy for downtown-focused recommendations to attract specific industries to short-term? And the next one, staff to explore a formalized business retention and expansion program, which would improve staff coordination with downtown businesses and allow for tracking of data over time.
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Council, y'all good with that? I think I know why it was medium before, but I think things have changed and we might be able to step that up a little bit, which
Yeah.
could be quite beneficial. I've not seen any objections, so I think we're good with that. Okay. Anybody? Other questions, comments? I'll just say I'm very excited to get this report. You know where I am, we've got the reports, where's the to-do list, and when are we gonna get, the updates on the to-do list? So this is great. That A, we did it, and B, what it shows of some of the things that are already going. So that's great.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I will add one thing. Just appreciation for all the staff involved. Being a member of the committee, I've been able to really learn so much more of what y'all do and so much of the work that gets put in behind the scenes. And so thank you to everybody involved. I really appreciate y'all giving the recommendation about maintenance and the importance of such. I know, the mayor and other of my colleagues have mentioned how important it is for maintenance. And so I look forward, whether that's a dedicated funding source or something, us being creative to make sure we have more people to help with that operation. Because I know it's just one or two right now. So, yeah, but thank you.
Yes, ma'am, thanks.
I'm hoping we finally found the right mix with the plant palette and everything else that we've got going on, because it's been a long time and we're ready, aren't we? All right, that's great. Yes, thanks to everyone who's putting efforts into this and making this happen. So that's great. And seeing nothing else, we will close out this item and we will go on to item 2.
Receive a presentation from the Police Department regarding automatic license plate reader policies and practices.
Ms. Reyes.
The next presentation is related to a February 4th council meeting item that included city council postponement of a contract amendment with Flock pending review of the police department's policy governing automatic license plate readers. Specifically, council asked that the police department address retention periods, privacy concerns, and data sharing in its policy. Since we received this direction, we have made revisions to the policy as outlined in the presentation you're about to receive from Chief Standridge. Next steps will include asking council to approve a resolution to amend the Flock contract to include all 33 cameras. Thank you for your time and attention. I will now turn it over to Chief Standridge for the presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, Stan Standridge, Police Chief. Give me hold.
Go ahead.
Okay.
We're just getting him logged in so he
Oh,
can be on
okay.
Zoom and be counted present.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Mayor, Council, yesterday, the city closed the budget process engagement. If you all recall, that was released and it went through March 17th, 2025. And so I offer that in relation to next slide. Oh, actually, I think he gave me this. Thank you, Hayden. I offer that because the strategic plan that the council originally adopted, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, was again sustained for 2025 going into 2026. And so I explain this for the benefit of our citizens. The goal as it relates to public safety, core services, and fiscal excellence is to deliver quality government services and improve community safety in a fiscally responsible manner with a professional workforce. And then it explains as it relates to community safety, I specifically enumerated number 4. Now again, this is council's priority, is to optimize the use of technology to improve community safety. Establish clear guidelines and protections governing the use of technology to ensure transparency, accountability, and respect for the personal privacy of the public. And I begin with that because Grisel Perez Carey provided some tentative results today that specifically correlates to this issue. If you don't know, there were 378 respondents who responded to the community survey, of which 296 ranked public safety in the top 10. Said differently, that's 78% of the citizens ranked public safety in the top 10. More specifically, 238 respondents, or 63% of our citizens, ranked public safety as the #1 concern. There were 26 outcomes that they were asked to benchmark, and so public safety again scored first out of those 26 outcomes 63% of the time. So I think that couches the conversation today. I am thankful to the mayor and the council for the continued inclusion of public safety. And so today I'm going to speak specifically to your item number 4 about leveraging technology to improve community safety. First, a little bit of history. Flock Group Incorporated. We originally came to council on April 19th, 2022, wherein we sought a resolution of which you all approved an agreement with Flock for license plate reader software. Then again, and 2 years later, on February 24th, 2024, you approved a multiple use agreement with TxDOT, Texas Department of Transportation, for the installation of license plate reader cameras along state right-of-ways. That's a necessary requirement. We have to coordinate with TxDOT. On June 4th, 2024, council then authorized a grant with the Motor Vehicle Crime Prevention Authority for an additional 10 Flock cameras. We then came back on August 20th, 2024, and council authorized an additional grant through the same grant entity for an additional 9 cameras. For our citizens' benefit, the department currently has 33 total cameras, not all of which are operational, which brings us to this day. Our why. I think it's important to explain the why, especially as it relates to capturing the essence of why are we doing what we're doing, why specifically are we using license plate readers, and why are we retaining them for the recommended 30 days. You'll hear me consistently say, I strongly recommend that we retain 30 days. I'm going to begin with the first one. Some people call this offense a peeping Tom. Others would more correctly and academically state it's a traveling voyeur. Regardless, the San Marcos Police Department investigated a series of incidents that occurred in 2024, so this is very contemporary, between October and November, involving window peeping, burglary, and trespassing. This criminal episode progressed to sexually oriented offenses, mostly targeting Texas State students living in apartment complexes. I'll explain more. The first reported incident in San Marcos was on October 20th, 2024 at 11:54 p.m. This is important. October 20th, 2024 is going to start the clock, so to speak, and I'll explain that in a minute. A female reported seeing a male attempt to open her roommate's window in Building 3. This person was contacted by San Marcos Police Department officers that night. He was identified. He claimed he was urinating in the bushes. He stated he does not live in the complex, but he was visiting a friend who he was going to smoke marijuana with, although he could not identify the friend nor give the friend's apartment number. The following night, October 21st, a roommate calls, reference this original call, and says that she had cameras in her bedroom that captured that same male actually attempting to open the windows, thereby vacating his excuse that he was urinating in the bushes. Progressed to October 28th. We're at the same apartment complex as 1:01 a.m. A surveillance camera with motion sensor was activated. The caller, who calls us, says that she saw legs in the video. That's all. PD responded, we checked the area, we could not locate anyone. A couple days later, it's now November 1st, 2024, a female resident of the same apartment complex reported a neighbor had recorded a male looking into her apartment. So this is going to be a different victim. This occurred at 2:30 a.m. Then, October 31st to November 1st, so we're talking over the night going into November 1st, 2 female victims were assaulted by an unknown male who entered into their apartment. One offense was a sexual assault, and the other was an indecent assault. Both were fostered by the charge of burglary of habitation. So it progressed. A detective is assigned. The detective asks the obvious question, are we dealing with a serial offender? He contacts the crime analysis unit. You all met Patty Hom 2 weeks ago, and they asked for a workup with all known information as it relates to this offender. There was a suspicion that it was the same person, and doing a deep dive in all of these previous calls, they realized patrol had already contacted and identified the guy who was urinating in the bushes. Why is this relevant? The next thing they did was they were able to identify what vehicle he operates, and then they went into the flock system to determine, was his vehicle in the vicinity of all of these other offenses? And guess what? It was. Hugely relevant to today's conversation. The flock query, based upon the crime analysis workup, all the work done by patrol, and all of the criminal investigations division occurred on the 18th day. That flock camera was allowed us to put a serial sexual predator at the scene of these multitude of offenses 18 days after the offenses occurred. So I offer that as that's part of our why when we start talking about retention. I want to talk briefly about Mandy Reynolds. You all may have known about her because this was discussed extensively. This case has already been adjudicated. This case goes back to Sunday, March 31st of 2023. Mandy Reynolds was one of our citizens. She was last seen alive by a friend on March 31st, 2023. On Tuesday, April 2nd, the suspect was buying a tote that Mandy was burned inside of, a plastic tote, several days after she was last seen alive. This will make sense in a minute. On Wednesday, April 3rd, her body was found burned in Robinson, Texas. Mandy was shot in the head and burned beyond recognition. The autopsy revealed that she had been dead for several days based off the decomposition of her body. Thursday, April 4th, Robinson PD is continuing their investigation. The next day, Friday, April 5th, they have possibly identified the victim because the victim's dog was left at the scene alive. The victim's dog never left her corpse. Inside that dog was a chip. That allowed us to identify Mandy and realize that she's one of our residents, not Robinson's. Thankfully, that Friday, Robinson PD, upon confirmation that she's one of ours, contacts us and says it is very possible this homicide occurred in San Marcos. This was 6 days after her disappearance. Had they waited until Monday, which they didn't, thankfully, it would have been 9 days. So I offer you this, and this has actually been a learning curve for me. Delayed reporting is more normative than even I had realized. So I asked our crime analyst, Patty Hom, do a query just for 2024. When a citizen reports a crime, look at the offense date and then look at the reporting date and look for the variance. The variances were shocking, which means it's more normal for delayed reporting, which argues for longer retention for the 30 days. The number one charge, which is really irrelevant for this conversation, but it's embezzlement. Embezzlement had an average 317 days delay in reporting. Criminal sexual contact has 513 days of delayed reporting. Forcible rape, 640 days delayed. There's a ton of there's sexual assault with objects, there's incest, there's wire fraud, and there's forcible sodomy. I'm trying to pick some that are very relevant to this conversation. Another felony, credit card ATM fraud, where they're breaking into our cars, they're taking your identifying information, and then they're going to the nearest convenience store and they're using those. Those are often reported by a delay of 103 days. So if we're going to try to find these offenders, and very often they're traveling 35 corridor and they're not our residents, stealing from our residents, then we need the maximum number of retention days. He goes on, one of the more surprising ones was shoplifting. Shoplifting has an average, and so we're not talking the maximum of 21 days of reporting delay. I asked that, Mayor, I looked with the same concerned look, and I looked at CID, Criminal Investigations Division, and I said, that seems unusual. It is not unusual for corporate loss preventions to get a report. They run it through corporate. Corporate decides, does it meet the threshold to involve local law enforcement? Then days later, in this case, 21 days later, they're notifying us. Having those flock cameras is crucial to be able to go back. We only have 9 days at that point because we retained for 30 days so that we can ultimately try to solve that shoplifting for our commercial businesses in San Marcos. So that is kind of our why. I think it frames the severity of the offenses that we're investigating. It also shows that we are using these cameras in the context of criminal investigations. And it also explains why we need to retain for the recommended 30 days. So, what is Flock? Flock license plate recognition was built with privacy in mind. It is a camera that takes a still image that focuses on the rear of vehicles on public roadways from fixed locations. The cameras gather objective evidence and facts about vehicle details, not people. They alert police to wanted vehicles, and they're used to solve crime. So, what do they not do? They do not utilize facial recognition. The Flock LPR system, license plate reader system, does not contain any personal or biometric information. The system is not used for traffic or speed enforcement. There is no speed gathering using these cameras. And there's a note from the provider that Flock Safety will never sell or share data with any third parties. So, when council voted to postpone the motion to move forward with the grants to authorize all 33 and the implementation thereof, I knew it was important to us, meaning San Marcos, our community, and the police department, that we try to get a solid policy that addressed many, if not all, of your concerns. So this team went to work. I believe what we have today is a very well-vetted policy that does contemplate your privacy concerns, as well as external data sharing with other law enforcement agencies. And I'll show, mostly for the benefit of our citizens, because they have not seen this presentation, I'll show everybody what we are recommending in this revised policy. All right, the slides will represent specific sections of the policy wherein changes are reflected in red and or strike-through. Each slide will reference the page of the actual policy. Council wanted us specifically to leverage 3 priorities, and I've listed them for the purpose of our citizens. Discuss revisions to the police department's AL, automatic license plate reader policy, while focusing on 3 council priorities. Number 1, you wanted us to look at retention periods. Number 2, you wanted us to provide language that addressed privacy concerns. And number 3, you wanted us to focus on data sharing with other law enforcement agencies. We did all 3 of those, which will be reflected in the slides to come. All right, the first one, the black represents existing policy, the red represents new inclusions based upon what council wanted us to address. I'm going to focus really just on the red portions. I want to let our community know that all of our policies are on our website. We receive so many open records requests asking for policies, but they're already out there. You can go to the City of San Marcos and then tab over to the police department's site, and one of the main buttons, icons, is a link to our policy. You can find the existing policy, the current policy, not the revised one yet. You can find that online. So the revision. Locations will be solely determined by investigative needs and not target any person based on their actual or perceived race, color, religion, creed, sex, gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, age, national origin, ethnicity, disability, veteran status, marital status, partnership status, pregnancy status, political affiliation or beliefs, and to the extent permitted by law, alienage or citizenship status. I've been asked repeatedly, there's a parenthesis there, Chief, and it says TBP 7.36D, close parentheses. What does that mean? We are in the process of becoming accredited. We shared, Chief Klett shared 2 weeks ago, our on-site inspection is April 23rd, 24th. That reference is a reference to a policy that we have to abide by for accreditation purposes. So when you see something in parentheses that says TBP, Texas Best Practice, and then the number is what specific practice Chief Klett has to prove compliance of. So that explains that.
Before you switch that one.
Yes, ma'am.
I actually appreciate the amendment. I was wondering though if we can add an additional protection explicitly. One around on the basis of economic status. It's in line with other things on there, just letting people know that if somebody's poor, homeless, indigent, we're not going to sit there and surveil them on the basis of such, which I think is pretty understandable.
I think it's understandable, and I would say at prima facie, the only reason we would surveil goes back to the original opening statement, an investigative need.
For sure. This
Yeah.
is just explicitly codifying it. So I'm not asserting that people are actively doing this, just to show.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, we can do that. Chief, you go with that? All right, 2 thumbs up.
Let's make sure that we've got 4 up here before
Okay,
we
yes,
change
ma'am.
it. We don't change it based on 1. So if we're looking at changing, Mr. Mendoza, you okay with this? That's fine. Mr. Scott?
That's fine.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea too. Mr. Gonzalez? Okay, we're all in.
I think you had a question, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Data sharing with other law enforcement entities. Who's sharing that information with us now? Anybody out there, any other agencies?
Yes.
There is.
So you'll see it, we'll get to the slide shortly, but the policy says that the only way we can share data is if it's a law enforcement entity. So the reason I say that is you all already know, but our citizens may not. There are private entities, commercial and residential, that have purchased flock cameras. We, if they give us permission, can see their data. They can never see our data. The policy says the only time somebody can see our data, meaning San Marcos data, is if they're law enforcement.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And there's a process for that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, so there was quite a bit of change on this page. This is page 2 of the existing policy, but red represents new or struck out. All users will receive initial and biennial training on the license plate reader system. I thought that was important. It's also a Texas best practice for accreditation. Biennial, for everybody's familiarity, just requires it every 2 years. That coincides, every peace officer has a training cycle. They have to accomplish training every 2 years for a certain number of hours. So I made this policy consistent with that 2-year cycle that's required by our commission.
That's fine. Why is prior to being granted access struck out?
Because it was a misplaced modifier, technically, because it can't say and biennial training prior to being granted access, because that is required.
I get that, but it looks like that is being removed as a requirement, period, and that concerns me.
Okay?
I don't care how we fix it, but
I can fix it. I'll say we'll receive initial training prior to being granted access and thereafter biennial
I
training.
think that's a perfect
I think
fix.
there's also a clause that talks about like before a user gets a login
There is.
with
Yeah.
under definitions. Because I too had this same concern, but I went back and saw under definitions. I think they're required to do it anyway prior to getting a login.
It is addressed elsewhere in the policy, but I can be very thorough.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Number 5, all users of the San Marcos Police Department license plate reader system will be mandated. This is a big change. Will be mandated to enter a reason for the query, primarily an incident or case number, in the reason field as part of conducting a query. Queries regarding auditing purposes will be excluded from the requirement to provide a case number. All outside agencies requesting permission to access the San Marcos Police Department's license plate reader system will be required to affirm the same mandate for queries. We will do that through a memorandum of understanding for any law enforcement agency, going back to your question, Councilman, who wants access to our data. They will need to enter into an MOU. The MOU will require of them the same thing we're going to require of us, which is if you're going to do a query in the FLOC database, you have to have a call number or a case number. That's for auditing purposes. It also ensures you all and our citizens that we're doing it for an investigative reason. Yes, ma'am.
So on 5, the last sentence, I appreciate the addition of the entire subsection, but the last sentence is something of great concern to me. So let's talk about a potential scenario as it relates to this last sentence in the sharing of outside agencies or with outside agencies. Let's say ICE. We see it happening in a bunch of other cities. Contacts this department and is asking for, maybe they have an individual gave you an LP and asked if this LP has been spotted in the city. What's the process?
There is a block in the FLOC system that allows agencies to check or uncheck immigration. So if that box were checked, and it is not, then you would receive notices related to immigration that could have been input into the system. We do not do any immigration tracking through FLOC. It's been unchecked ever since we've had the access to the system.
Maybe let me refine my question. Just focusing on the LP, not the individual, because the argument is these things do not capture individual
Correct.
information, right? They're asking for an LP. They ask the department for an LP. What is the process? Do we share that LP per this subsection?
All right, Councilwoman and City Attorney, I'm teeing you up. We have got to be really careful with what we articulate because of an existing provision,
Understandable.
Senate Bill 4.
I share that with you.
So
Understandable.
I think it's best that that question be asked of the city attorney and he provide you formal legal guidance.
Okay. Hypothetically, if this happens, per the language in this subsection, would we be required to share that information? And what would that process be? It would just go, because it's talking about affirm the same mandate for queries. That same mandate is what's talking about it former, which is what everybody already has to do anyway. My argument is, why is it not more stringent for outside agencies? And if that could mean that when that request comes in, it goes similar to other language y'all have in this policy, it goes to either you or your designee, but something. So I guess
Okay.
with that hypothetical.
I can answer that question, and then, Mr. Geary, I'm going to tag you. If the system does not capture the data, and they ask us for a license plate related to immigration, our system will not have said license plate, because we do not capture license plates for immigration concerns.
But we capture all license plates. So if I'm
Yeah.
driving a vehicle, it's captured.
Yes.
You're asking for more cameras, which puts more opportunities for capture.
Okay.
So regardless of all of those things, it's still going to capture the license plate I'm driving if I'm undocumented, hypothetically.
Okay, Mr. Geary?
All right, so what we can't do under Chapter 752 of the Government Code is prohibit, right? We can't prohibit officers and have policies that prohibit any kind of enforcement of immigration law, right? But we don't have to proactively assist with enforcement. Now, the thing about other agencies, normally we have cooperative agreements with agencies where all law enforcement agencies share data. So my understanding that would be true of any federal agencies as well.
I figured.
Now, we're not, under the policy, there's no proactive intention to assist, right? It's just, if they request under the current policy, they could request that information. Now, could we have a stricter standard of, do we require court orders, for example, before we share that information? I'd have to explore that, because that could create a lot of complications, because I think we have a lot of cooperative arrangements with federal agencies on non-immigration investigations, right? So where do we draw that line if the FBI, for example, is trying to track something that involves our jurisdiction? I'd have to explore that a little further on what kind of agreements we could enter into with the federal agency on that. But right now, under the current policy, yes, we would be sharing it.
Thank you. Let's give another scenario. And for the public watching, for my colleagues, the reason I talk about these scenarios are not because there are things that potentially may happen. They're already happening. Yesterday, we saw the city of Houston arrest 2 abortion providers. So here's the second scenario. Right now, the state of Texas does not have prohibitions on the individual getting an abortion. But looking at the way this state's going, looking at the way this nation's going, very much could be plausible. And when we talk about obviously not proactively assisting these agencies in conducting these things that may not be within our morals and beliefs, we are creating infrastructure that they can use one day if they wish for the things like that. So in a scenario, when we talk about outside agencies, I'm not okay, and if we need to come back as to not waste too much time, but I'm not okay with the latter part of it as far as them having the same mandates. I'm not necessarily saying we have to go as extreme as a court order either, but what I am saying is there are other themes in this policy that basically make things go to you or your designee. That allows us to know what's going on, because at the end of the day, we have a fiduciary duty and a constitutional duty. We are giving the people's money to go make this purchase to then surveil them. So the least we can do, I think, are establishing better safeguards, and I don't think this is enough. And so I would be open to exploring what additional safeguards we can add as far as outside agencies are concerned.
I'm always going to take you back to community safety, public safety, which is we should be rooted in. I'm going to go back to Mandy Reynolds. When detectives realized the flock hits, they were able to track her vehicle, obviously with her deceased body, him driving Robinson, the vehicle then returns to San Marcos. We found that suspect because we had access to the flock system in Wichita, Kansas. That suspect went to Wichita, Kansas, and because of LPRs, we were able to contact that agency, get him into custody, subsequently interview him within a matter of days. So I know you're dealing with a hypothetical. I'm dealing with the practical, everyday community safety of citizens just like Mandy Reynolds. And I'm going to always advocate on their behalf.
That's great. I don't object to what y'all did and the work that was put in with that. I said it the last time we had this discussion. I don't have objections that there are potentially good uses, right? I don't want anybody to go through what she went through and not have some form of resolve. But I'm specifically talking about, it's not hypotheticals when it's already happening, right? I can tell you for a fact, I know the way this state is running and has, it is going to continue to lean more far right. The legislation that they are passing are putting more criminal restrictions out there for things that are just so arbitrary. We're building infrastructure that they can then tap into to potentially use, and I'm not talking in the distant future, I'm talking in the near future.
Policy, we need to write policy so that it covers a lot of cases and maybe even cases that we don't think are going to happen. But that's what policy does, is you're looking at the future and how are we going to deal with a different type of situation. And so I'm concerned. I'm also looking for where we define outside agency.
Outside agency would be any law enforcement entity that is also a customer of Flock.
I understand what you're saying. Where is it defined? Where is that set? Is it in this policy? Is it somewhere that's overarching all of your policies? I get using it throughout here, but I'm looking for the definition of outside agency. And
I can include a definition for outside agency. It is not under the definitions under section 3.
right. So I think that's something that we need. Are y'all good with that, defining outside agency? That goes back to your first question, Mr. Gonzalez. We're good, okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I did send an amendment, though, for this particular section.
Oh, do we have it ready to look at?
Yes, I sent it to Hayden. While we're waiting for that, so the amendment would essentially, I'm moving to strike,
We don't do motions. It would be a suggestion, and then we'll go around the table.
Okay, so my suggestion is to strike the language where it says affirm the same mandate for queries, and instead place shall require prior approval from the chief of police or their designee in accordance with applicable policies before access is granted. I took this language from other parts of this policy as it relates to chief of police or their designee. This is an additional safeguard that, quite frankly, is not that safe, but I figured it's a compromise.
My feedback to that is, I'm just gonna hypothesize. Let's say we get 30 queries from outside law enforcement agents. Let's say Austin, Dallas, they're querying our system because of an investigative need. I cannot approve on a case-by-case basis every query. You're setting me up for failure. That's why we do the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding.
Or their designee. So if y'all needed to split that work, one of the things I've realized ever since I've taken this role is there's a lot of people in the city doing a lot of work individually, having a lot on their plate. So, if it's an additional safeguard and it's a matter of having to have more on your plate, we just got to do what we need to do to keep people safe. So if you can split that work, that's why I added or their designee, so you can pick somebody who you feel could assist you in something like that.
And council, my only feedback is that's gonna be incredibly onerous on us. I do not have people sitting around waiting for additional work. We turn work away. So you could literally be queuing us up for another full-time employee to do nothing but, they're gonna have to contact the requesting agency, ask, I guess, a template of questions to confirm they have a criminal investigation, find out what's the criminal. They're gonna have to determine, do we agree with their investigative need before we grant access to the query? That's a full-time detective. And then how are we gonna do that on the weekends? How are we gonna do that after hours? I cannot meet you where you wanna be.
So where's the middle ground?
I think the memorandum of understanding that compels anybody.
Do we have a copy of that?
No.
No, not yet, because I didn't want to go through the work unless y'all wanted me to do the MOU. The MOU would compel a municipal agency, as an example, let's say Dallas PD, it would compel them, before they submitted the query, they would have to give us a CAD, computer-aided dispatch, call number, which can be verified through the audit, or a case number related to an investigation. I think that is a substantive direction change. And it indicates that that city is doing something on a law enforcement purpose. It's connected to something that can be audited, but there's no way we can audit every query on the front end for every outside agency request. I can't agree to that.
That's why I'm looking for what's the middle ground. So,
Because that's not a hard threshold to meet. Those two pieces of information, if I have nefarious intentions, those two pieces of information, they're not that hard to secure. So what is the additional, in process now, what is the additional safeguard that y'all make to make sure that those things are actually in line with something that we would be wanting to happen?
Well, it's the same for our staff. Keep in mind, the same burden we're putting on them is the same burden we're putting on us.
But our staff is in-house. We can see what they're doing. We can talk to them. You know, we can better understand their intentions.
I'll say it the easiest way I can think. I don't have the time nor the employees to police Dallas Police Department, Houston Police Department, Austin Police. I don't have that time or the resources. So Chief Anderson, I'm gonna kick it your way.
yeah, that other one you've probably got to turn on the side button.
So, council, in regards to this presentation and coming up with modifications and amendments to the current policy to further support, privacy or interaction with other law enforcement agencies, staff has done a really good job of coming up with, I actually counted them probably 7 or 8 different amendments to further strengthen our policy that we have in place. I actually overlaid it with other agencies, not only just in Central Texas, but North Texas, but across the nation. I think it's probably one of the best policies out there. I do understand your concern about what can we do on the front end to ensure that other law enforcement agency is abiding by our rules and regulations. The MOU, from my perspective, and there may be very few departments across the nation that actually utilize that, is a great way of doing that. What makes the request of adding further explanation easier is if we had an 24-hour fusion center. Obviously, the organization that I come from, we had a 24-hour fusion center. And so all of that information that you're asking for, which is really investigated information on the front end, we had 30 people to do that. But we was getting 200 to 300 inquiries on a daily basis. But you had 20 people to do that, but you had 20 people on the shelf 24 hours to be able to do that in real time. And so that is some of just the hesitation that Chief is trying to explain to you as well. We necessarily don't have that personnel.
Can I ask a question? Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think, to answer your question, Mayor, in regard to what is a middle ground, I think that the MOU is what staff was looking at as a middle ground. Because there's no protections, or there's nothing that we would do, like we do now. Or we could do something like what Ms. Rodriguez is mentioning in regard to having something that is sustained every single encounter. And so I think the MOU was a way to ensure that contractually, there was some agreements between the different agencies that there would be some understanding and agreement in terms of the things that we value as a community for preserving privacy rights. And so that was the proposal, was to do this MOU as part of a middle ground.
And the MOU would or would not include that they've got to provide us with a case number or something else?
Would.
It would.
That's what the policy.
Okay, so that, I like that. But my question is, how do they access it now? What are the guardrails?
Currently, right now, they're not required to put in any numbers.
How do they access it?
They log into the Flock portal with their
Okay.
agency credentials. Everybody's credentialed through Flock. They would log in, and then if they queried a license plate, it would tag that license plate if it
Okay.
had been in San Marcos.
So basically, there's a big network run by Flock,
Correct.
and we're all just a bunch of cameras on it, and Flock knows which cameras belong to whom.
Correct.
Okay.
And Flock, I have a representative here if you have any specific questions for her.
So if we're going to require a case number or something else from, I'm going to call them the outsiders that want to get into the system to see what's going on in San Marcos, would that require software change?
No, the memorandum will require, there's already a field where they can annotate that. I'll just be completely.
So there's already a field, we're just not, nobody has to fill it out.
That is correct.
That answered that question.
But
Okay.
Flock likes the idea so much, they're considering changing their actual form to do that, because it's a great suggestion. I think we're meeting you all far past halfway with these measures.
Yeah, I like that because, and there's, well, we just hope that nobody ever makes a typo when they're keying it in or
And Mayor,
comes up
Which
with something
happens.
funky.
the Flock representative has, her name is Kristen, her hand is up. If you want to hear directly from her,
Certainly, I do not see that from here. Okay,
I don't either, but there she is.
okay.
Hello, hi, Madam Mayor and Council. Hello, Chief. Thank you so much for the opportunity to join you all. I just wanted to add what Chief was sharing. So with regard to data control and sharing with external law enforcement agencies, so remember that the Flock data is 100% owned by the city, and all of the sharing controls are with the department. And so it's not necessarily, if you are a Flock customer, you immediately have access to every law enforcement agency's cameras. All of that can be delineated by your department. Chief can choose to share with other agencies regionally, within the state, and nationally. And of course, he's spoken to the benefits of sharing. But again, all of those sharing, that access is within the department's control. I just wanted to clarify that piece a little bit further.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Kristen.
I
All
have
right.
a question.
Yes, sir.
Take a minute. And maybe the city manager can just remind me, what was the intent of us doing this? I thought it was made to be downtown and take the license plates downtown, not any other place.
So as with anything, right now, it has been a matter of staffing and not being able to have police everywhere, right? And that's not something we wanted to do as a
Yeah,
community.
but let's back up.
But it's-
This is not the same as the cameras we were talking about for
Right.
downtown.
It's
No, no,
not the same as the
but the
cameras
license
downtown.
readers were
The
gonna-
license plate readers is something that, again, it leverages technology instead of having
Well, and the
people.
license plate readers we use now is for the tickets.
Yeah,
For the
okay.
2
We
hours.
do have that now.
Correct, we already have it.
And
We
it's
have
it's
17
completely
cameras
separate.
currently.
Right, okay.
And so this would increase, with this grant, this would increase to 33 cameras. So we have the technology already in place. We're utilizing it for the cases like Chief Standers talked
Right.
about. So this would be adding additional cameras at additional locations.
Okay, and we only have half of those cameras that work.
We have 17 currently.
What, no,
Yeah.
I think you're still talking about the downtown cameras, which is
Yeah.
completely different. And the LPR cameras are the ones that they do to see if the same car is there 2 hours, past
Okay.
2 hours, and that's in a truck that drives by. So that's a
Right.
separate system.
Okay,
So we're talking 3 different things, Flock.
There's 3 different things.
Downtown cameras, and then the parking LPR. There's at least 3.
Correct.
right.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I just, I got confused of
That was a good
the
question.
cameras there and here, and too much government, I think, in a way.
Okay, so, I'm going to, I guess, have to be okay with this new process with the MOU where they have to enter something in there. It's not gonna be perfect, but at least if somebody's pulling a stunt, which is possible, I'm not talking about our people, I'm talking about others, that we will be able to go back, we can determine. And at that point, if y'all determine that they are not using the system in the manner in which we think they should be using the system, can we pull that person's access from looking at ours? Can we pull that agency's access from looking at our cameras?
I believe we could pull the agency's access. I don't think I can pull an individual officer from another agency.
Okay,
It goes back to they're gonna have to police their officers. But
Right.
to your point, having a case number or a call number allows us to contact that other agency and say, hey, you need to investigate what your officer did and why. We would
Yeah.
expect them to police themselves.
right, okay. But we would at least have information, and we would know who it was that was in looking.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I think this is going to be the, unless someone has what I call a flash of brilliance here and sometime, I think this may be all we can do right now, because I can't go with somebody in your department has to look at each one of these requests. Would I like to do that? Yes. Can we do that? I don't think so. So that's where I am on that one.
I haven't even seen the MOU.
Well,
I would have read it. You know, I would have had
yeah, I'd
questions.
still like to see what that's got to have, including the violation of the above could result in your agency's, loss of access.
Right.
And one thing to keep in mind is, say we deny access to an agency, there's still the remedy for them to get a court order or a warrant, whatever
Sure.
it's going to be, just like any
Yeah.
other law enforcement investigation. So the likelihood is they will be able to access the information at some point. The question is, which
But
is
there are
more
gonna
the
be some
policy
real
question,
guardrails on that, man.
as cooperating agencies, how can we agree to work together without having to go through that process? But
Yeah.
at some point, they probably will have access to it one way or the other, just as a.
And if they go through all that process, I get it, and I think that's got some of the information that we were looking for, is why are they looking? They'd have to tell us to get that. Okay, I would like to let's look at this MOU, but it sounds like it's a great path.
Yes, ma'am.
So, Mr. Mendoza, are you good with that? Yes, ma'am. All right, Mr. Gonzalez?
Yeah, one other question real quick. How many queries do you expect per day or per week or per month?
I honestly, is Commander Spriegel on? Liz?
Yes?
Commander Spriegel, I'm gonna tee you up if you could, she's gonna move you over as a panelist if you're not already.
There's, and as a panelist.
Okay, Eric, if I can tee you up.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
It varies based on the day, each day. And so on average, we'll see somewhere between 7 to 10 queries. There may be days where there's 17 or 18, hits. But oftentimes those are the same vehicle because there may be multiple cameras in the area based on one of our business holders that may have cameras. And so it'll hit multiple times. So there's times where there's been anywhere from 15 to 20. And then there's days where there's 8 to 10. But when there's 15 to 20, sometimes 7 to 10 of those are made up of two vehicles hitting more than one time in the day.
What do you foresee for San Marcos? Is this what you're seeing here?
Yes, that's what we're currently seeing.
Yeah,
Okay.
because we've already got them. We're just looking to add more, so we've got more roadways covered, correct?
That is correct.
I'm just trying to see if it increases, and it will. Someday you might need that extra personnel to monitor those. And
They'll let us know. They'll let Ms. Reyes know.
Well, and the other thing, and I don't believe we've gotten to it in the presentation, but one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we provided with this is a transparency tool that really does look at kind of where we're seeing some of the activity and things like that. So I don't think we've gotten to that part of the presentation, but that was something we wanted to make sure is that we understand privacy is a really big concern, and so it's got to be balanced with what the public benefit is with having these particular, cameras and technology. And so we have to look at how we weigh that. we still recognize that we're a governmental entity and we need to be as transparent as possible. So while having it, we want to ensure, how do we govern ourselves? How do we govern the privacy of it? But then also, how are we providing information to the public about how the information is being utilized and things of that nature? So there are transparency tools, and we have one that we have worked on to try to make sure that it's available to people to see on our website at all times. And so that's the other aspect that I hope we'll get to today, to be able to show that demonstration of what some of the information that will then be available out there that we don't currently have available today.
Since she queued that up, I don't see Russell Wild. Somebody contact Russell, have him.
He's in the lobby.
Russell, send Hayden the portal so Hayden can access that in a little bit. Thank you. All right, Mayor, you want me to continue?
I just need to make sure that I've got for, Ms. Rodriguez, you're good with looking at the MOU? We'll
I would
yes.
love to, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then we'll figure out if that's where we go with that. But we'll move forward with that item. So,
Wait, I do have something on 6, though. It's just a question, because I couldn't gauge it by reading this. So regarding the audits, who is the auditor in this equation? Who are they employed by?
It's Commander Eric Spriegel, who you just heard, and Sergeant Tommy Villanueva. They are doing the auditing on our end.
Okay.
what does that mean?
What does that mean? So, I asked the same question. I, in my naivety, thought, they're probably getting 50, hundreds of alerts a day, and that's where Commander Spriegel said, no. We're talking an average of potentially 5 a day, and if it's more, sometimes it's the same vehicle hitting different cameras.
Right.
And I said, oh, okay. And I said, well, do you look at those on a daily basis? He said, yes, they all come to my email. He has a separate account set up for Flock. So he and Tommy are looking at those on a daily basis for 2 reasons. For the investigative perspective, because Commander Spriegel oversees criminal investigations, Sergeant Villanueva oversees the narcotics unit. So they're looking at it already. So it isn't an arduous process to see it literally on a probably 5-day-a-week basis. And then we'll require a formal audit where they're going to go back and check to make sure the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted. Looking for call numbers, case numbers, and such.
Okay.
Is that the one you do once a year?
Says at minimum once a year. I'm going to likely require more, but we wanted the policy to say at minimum once.
I
Yes, sir.
saw that.
Good question.
Mayor,
Okay?
question about the
Mr.
audit.
Mendoza.
Oh, yes.
About the audit, so, just audits change from company to company. When they're auditing, are they looking at who logged in compared to what they're seeing? I mean, what entails that auditing?
The audit is, really, it's number one, the alerts, and then they can actually go in and look at, see, okay, we input this system, let's say we have a missing person, so we're gonna have to do an Amber Alert. Well, at some point, some detective is gonna go into the system, they're gonna log in with their unique agency identifier, and they're gonna have to put a case number and/or a call number.
Okay.
When they do that audit, they're looking, did Detective X do exactly as described? And then secondly, why did they put it in there? Does it meet the threshold for entry into Flock?
Thank you.
Yes.
So I guess with that, since it's done in-house, and I've known Commander Spriegel and Mr. Villanueva since I was a kid. So I'm not asserting that they would be doing anything with ill will. What I am saying, though, is since we're doing it in-house, what safeguards do we have in place that there are no conflict of interest, there are so many other agencies that get third parties, independent, people to come do audits. So is this similar to what other departments are doing?
I honestly,
Like, who oversees them?
I do.
Okay.
And I think I've proven my track record as it relates to accountability. I think y'all heard very clearly 2 weeks ago that I am strongly favored as it relates to we're going to have accountability. And so to answer your question very directly, they report to me. I would not be willing to pay an outside vendor to access a law enforcement system that I'm not even sure they can access, because you have to have criminal justice information system training, has to be done every 2 years. It gets complicated really quick. So I read a lot of policies in preparation for this evening. I didn't read a single policy that says they're going to outsource, not even agencies that are resource rich like Dallas. They don't outsource their audits. We have an Office of Professional Oversight for a reason.
Yeah.
We then built up the investigators from 1 to 4, and you saw the corresponding numbers over the last 4 years.
Okay, so here's my question, and I hate to say this, but I'm going to. Let's say you've got somebody in a different department. Maybe they're new to all of this, and their girlfriend just left them, and they decide they're going to use a system, try to find where their girlfriend went. She said she was going out of state or whatever. How would we know that they're using it for a purpose for which there's no case number, no suspicion of,
Are you saying the outside police department?
somebody not us?
Yeah, okay, that's a good, great question. All right, first of all, during the audit, they're gonna realize that when the query was done, there was no associated case number. So Commander Spriegel would contact CID in, let's say,
Podunk,
Podunk,
Texas.
Texas, and say, hey, this person did this query for this reason. Now, Commander Spriegel knows, and whoever he's talking to on their end knows, what you just described as a criminal offense in the state of Texas. And you'll see that in the policy in just a minute.
Yeah.
So at that point, we would probably provide an accusation that they would need to investigate criminally.
Of course, it depends on how they type this stuff into our system as to what they were looking for, but still.
Which is why we do the audit. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, but if we only do it once a year, that's not.
Minimum, once a year.
That's not helping. Okay.
Mayor, I appreciate the question real quick because it helped. So I guess I'm misunderstanding the policy because I thought you can't even get access to a query unless you submit the case number or the other number associated.
So the department, Podunk, Texas, let's stick with the mayor's example, will execute an MOU. They will acknowledge on their end that all of their end users will comply with the policy that will require that. So let's say tomorrow, Commander Spriegel comes to work and he sees that there was a query against our system and it had no such number. That's a violation of the MOU that then triggers a conversation with that department.
For sure. I'm talking before that, though. If similar to even Mr. Gonzalez, when we log into these computers, I can't access anything inside the computer unless I put in a password. Is that not the case for this?
Yeah, if you.
Because that's what I understood in the policy as it was written, that if I'm sitting in front of a computer and I want to access something and do a query, I have to put those one of two identifying features, and then I get access to the actual platform.
No, at this point, it is permissive, not a mandatory field, and we all know that. We all see the little red asterisk that says you can't move beyond unless you enter this field. At this point, it's permissive, which is why we require the agency to sign the MOU to hold their staff accountable. At this point, and Kristen can speak to this, FLOC does not have that as a mandatory block, which is why our
Okay, but
commander would call them.
let's back up a minute.
That's concerning.
The login is not into our system, correct? It's into the FLOC system.
Correct,
So there's an account and password,
correct.
and agencies request account and passwords for new people as they come on and take these, someone's not retired and need to deactivate that one. That's correct. Okay. So, I just want to make sure we got that, because y'all were kind of talking about two things at the same time, and I see that Ms. McLeod has her hand up, so I'm going to let her speak.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, just to add a little bit, a search reason is required. It is a required field. However, what that search reason needs to be is determined by the individual department. So as Chief was explaining, requiring that case number or specific incident number, again, would make that audit process, it would clarify and provide additional information versus just allowing a department to enter in a very general, investigation, if you will, that word. But a search is required, and we do strongly encourage departments to outline specifically what that requirement is, as Chief has done in the policy that's proposed.
Yes, but those case numbers aren't validated in somebody's system, so in the example that I've got, somebody could fake a case number and say shoplifting, and that's why we're looking at them. So any of that stuff can happen at any time, but as long as there's consequences so that it doesn't happen again, I think may be the best that we can hope for.
And I think the Podunk Texases are gonna be very wary of losing that access.
Yes.
So, yeah, there's gonna be probably a high level, I know there is for us, so I think they would as well. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and move forward, maybe. Hayden, there it is. This is a substantive change. It said originally that reasonable suspicion or probable cause was not required. It is now going to be required for any criminal investigation.
That looks like a really good improvement.
Yes,
Y'all
ma'am.
good with this? I'm looking to see 4 yeses.
Okay.
Okay.
There it goes. All right, the automatic license plate recognition system, database and capture information are to be used for official law enforcement purposes only, such as when the data relates to a specific criminal investigation or missing person. So again, I'm putting in substantive specifics to meet the council's priority. And then I took out the utilization of the ALPR system for any other reason will require the approval of the chief of police. I'm not gonna ever approve something unless there's a clear nexus to missing people or some type of investigative need. So I just struck that. There it goes. Let's see, the captured data shall be purged after 30 days from the date of the read unless it is evidence. Now, I put in here, the department believes 30 days is the necessary amount of time to investigate crimes in the community. I think this is important to marinate for just a minute, and I actually think I provide peer cities. Everybody is 30 days except Austin, and this was validated by both Flock and by external policy review. And the reason 30 days is the normative standard is because of delayed reporting. I could not be supportive of anything, especially on the low end, like 7 days. If you had done 7 days, you possibly miss Mandy Reynolds. And by the way, the outcome of that was he was sentenced to life. So the 30 days is necessary because delayed reporting is more normative than even I thought. It gives our officers and our detectives the ability to solve crimes, which increases public safety, which directly correlates to council's strategic priority. And it's working. Even with 17 operational cameras, we've seen a 50% reduction in violent crime in 2 years.
How are those correlated?
Because I gave you some very specifics. We have a repeat sexual offender that is captured through ALPR.
But-
Had we not had license plate readers, we probably would not have been able to make that arrest. It's going to be directly contributory to higher sexual assault numbers.
But even that example that you just gave, let's break it apart. You're talking about, in your first statement, you said that it was proven to be correlating with a reduction in crime. In that example, the crime already happened. The camera helped find the individual. So my question is how the camera prevents crime.
Okay, so he committed, let's say, 5 crimes. What about number 6, 7, 8? How many victims are we willing to occur before we say, let's leverage technology because we don't have enough cops? I want to prevent these 3. These 5 got by me, but if I can leverage technology to prevent 3, I'm preventing crime.
So I guess I'm trying to break down what is the hope is that when people see, the general public, see cameras inside their community, what is it supposed to invoke so that somebody doesn't commit a crime, in your opinion?
I think you would have to ask them. I'm not going to speak on their behalf.
Well, I mean, in these 2 particular cases, the folks were caught and
2 particular cases, but as we know, there are hundreds of thousands of people who come through this town daily, many of which are law-abiding citizens. And the way we collect data now is indiscriminately. This isn't something this has been a constitutional concern. Even Congress acted in 2015 related to something similar, but the whole basis of them acting was to repeal a law that was indiscriminately collecting data. Because they viewed overwhelmingly at that time that it had serious constitutional concerns. All of us in this room are probably law-abiding citizens. But because we have one that we continue to keep mentioning, I don't know about Shane. He just pointed to himself. I don't know about him. With the exception of Shane, we're looped in that too. Our data is being collected indiscriminately. We don't have, similar to when you log into your phone, when you log into anything, there are terms of agreement that we can opt out of. We have been given no opportunity to opt out of this. And we have said multiple times, we said it the last time, that this data does not collect personal information. What do you call it when there's cameras all around this town and can track my every whereabout, down to where I spend my money, down to where I eat, down to who I'm with? It's collecting all of that. Those are personal information. That's personal information that we all would formally be like, what the heck is going on? I mean, did anybody read 1984?
Yes.
That's why it's banned. That's why the government banned it. So it's like, I need us to really understand it's not just these examples that we're talking about. It's all of us too. It's those indiscriminate data collection too.
And I'm not going to minimize what you're saying, because I understand. Obviously, we live in a different world in the sense that technology is available everywhere, phones, whatever. I mean, if we have any kind of device, that is something that can track our whereabouts. If someone, you hear about people that can put air tags and track, and things like that without your consent. The deal with it, I think, with us is just in the sense of it's available. It doesn't mean that it's actively monitoring any one individual all the time unless there's a need for that based on a reported crime or something that has happened. So that the thing that I recall too is when there was a kidnapping, alleged kidnapping, because I don't know if it ever went to trial, but in Playscape. And I was immediately contacted by council members saying, hey, I want cameras in the parks.
Right.
Why don't you have those things? We need more of those to be able to do that. So this is something that has been utilized. I know he gave 2 examples, but there have been other scenarios that have happened within our community where the use of technology has been helpful for not prevention. I get what you're saying about prevention, and I think that's a good nuance to clarify, but it's more about being able to catch who it is that is being accused or to recover somebody if there was in the case of the kidnapped individual. So it's some of those kinds of scenarios where we've seen the effectiveness, and you've agreed that that's something that you see the utility of. It's just the regulation, and I get where you're coming from on that, the regulation of the information and ensure that it's not being used in a way
Right.
that could be used against someone. And I understand where
The
your
filming it's
concern
going to
is.
be that way, the scanning's going to be that way, and that's why we've tried to put the guardrails on it,
And
so that we can have some control over how it's used.
Yes, ma'am.
And
going to-
when,
going
and
to your
by
point,
whom.
That's where the court cases are. It
Yeah.
hasn't been the use of the cameras that's violates any constitutional standard. It's been individual cities or departments that have established policies that, and really, they go back to the basic policy of the Fourth Amendment, search and seizure and all that. And, but if you have the guardrails in place, the court cases the majority of them have upheld the validity of the use of the cameras. But again, in individual cities, yes, there have been abuses, but that's true with any Fourth Amendment, any search and seizure, same kind of deal. It's still under that Fourth Amendment scrutiny.
Okay,
So it was mentioned in the beginning, there was a compromise as far as the retention policy, but I'm not seeing one. It's still the 30 days.
I don't think I ever said that we were recommending a compromise on the 30 days. I think, if anything.
It was on the slide where you gave the 3 things that council wanted, and the verbiage you had said was that there was compromises for all 3. So that's why I was asking. Because when I got down to the actual, and I will be the first to say, I appreciate these amendments, which is why I didn't have a litany of amendments. I appreciated them. Again, though, the retention and showing me the other cities, I'm not really, if we don't want to do something like Austin, fine. I never thought y'all were going to go for something like Austin. Let's be real. There is no compromise, though, in the 30 days. In the 2 examples you gave me, both of those were under 20.
Yes,
So,
ma'am. I'm
well,
gonna,
here,
Go ahead.
go ahead, and then what I need to do, or we could talk about this all night, we can't, is, I'm going to go around the table to see where we are in the 30 days, and then we need to move on.
That's
But,
fine.
go ahead.
To be directly responsive to the councilwoman's request, I'm formally requesting on behalf of the entire department and our community that it remain 30 days. Because again, I've cited examples, even shoplifting, the most innocuous is 21 days
Yeah.
beyond the reporting. So I'm sticking with 30.
Corporations, you know,
So, Ms. Rodriguez,
no,
do you want to provide a different number?
15.
Okay. Mr. Gonzalez, where are you? And your microphone, turned on, please.
I'd like to entertain 20 days.
Okay, 20 days.
I'll stay at 30. Mr. Scott?
I'm at 30.
Mr. Mendoza? And we've got two people who are not here, so we may need to revisit this, or we will need to revisit this. But at this point, we are where we are, and we need to move on.
Yes, ma'am. All right. This simply says what we've been discussing, because we jumped ahead and it's talking about the memorandum of understanding. I won't relist that. But then it talks about the transparency portal. And so Commander Spriegel began working with Flock last week. Our transparency portal is actually live but latent, meaning it can actually be seen but only behind a hidden door. So with that, Mr. Meagle has provided that.
Would you say
Once-
that again?
It's alive, but it's latent, meaning it's hidden. I can't go out, I don't think, and see this publicly yet unless I have behind the firewall
What is
access.
it?
The portal, the transparency portal.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Mayor. The transparency portal,
Can y'all zoom in on that, just because we didn't get that in the
We can't see that.
packet?
Oh, now it's getting better. On my screen it is.
so it will tell our citizens our policy, what's detected, what's not detected, the acceptable use policy. It will explain how many days of data retention, 30 days. The number of owned cameras is currently 17. If we approve the additional on April 1st, it would be 33. That's all we're asking for. It talks about the hot list alerted on, and those fancy acronyms are the national systems as it relates to crime. Then vehicles detected in the last 30 days, it will give you an actual number for the last 30 days. Then hot list hits in the last 30 days, and then searches. So I think this is a pretty good portal that Flock has done, and they do it for each city that wants it. And so we believe this is something that we would turn on once the policy is finalized. Thank you, Hayden.
Okay, is there anybody that, I need to know if y'all are good with this or not? Mr. Gonzalez?
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
And I certainly am. Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Mendoza?
Yes.
And Ms. Rodriguez?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, Hayden, if you can go back to PowerPoint, sir. This is the provision, Mayor, that you asked about the girlfriend and the officer misuses the information. This simply restates Penal Code 39.06, which creates a criminal offense for exactly what you described. This has been added to policy.
Okay, so if there's no objections up here, we're all good with
I
that.
do have a question, actually, to see if there's any, if I can speak to the young lady who is from the company itself. Whenever, like in the IT industry, when we go into things like HIPAA and things like that, anytime we access these systems, not only do we have to agree and take the training every year, but when we first log in, there's a pop-up that double checks saying, do you, just remind you, if you violate any of these, you're held accountable. Is there anything that you have in this software program that just sends a reminder to the individual user saying, hey, by the way,
Every time they log in?
every time?
Yeah.
a good question.
Good
Yeah,
question.
it says it, Penal Code 39.06.
What
Well,
it is it's
Thank
a
you.
reminder when you log in
that's
of
what-
what the law
It's annoying,
is.
it's really annoying to do it, but it
So let's
does-
let her answer.
So as far as a general, when there is a login, I will double check on that. I don't believe that exists. But that is something that I know has been suggested. Chief and I have had conversations about that. And we have flagged that for our product team to see if that is something that we can work into the future. But again, as far as upon the login, I don't believe something exists, but I can make 100% sure and let Chief know.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you, Kristen.
Chief,
All right.
what is the consequences if someone does do this?
It's a Class A misdemeanor. It would be referred to the district attorney. They would have to decide, are they going to charge the officer under this section or for official oppression? And then the district attorney could go a couple of routes. Even being a misdemeanor, they could still send it to a grand jury and indict, or they could issue an arrest warrant based upon the probable cause.
And what can you do if, I mean, what's the punishment that you will implement?
And I wish your question were based in theory, but I've actually had it in my former life. We did an internal and co-occurring criminal investigation, outsourced the criminal to the Rangers, filed the case with the district attorney for consideration, and obviously terminated employment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Serious business, okay. All right. Okay, so we're good with this. I mean, that's just stating a fact.
Yes.
Okay.
Hayden, you're going to have to help me because this clicker may be dead. All right. This, it talks about harassment or intimidation, so I just added and state law. It again reinforces what you all want. We want the end user to recognize the significance of everything. So I just added
Yeah.
state law.
Okay. Don't see any objections, so
Okay.
we're good.
I cleaned up language. In my world, I live in a civil service world. You have to be real careful with what you talk about administrative discipline, because that's really an oxymoron. It's either discipline or it's administrative corrective action. So this is just a cleanup. And I just wanted to note that it can include discipline up to and including termination.
Okay.
Can we, on number 3, implement these same protections that were listed in the policy for, I forgot what section. Let me see. It's that main one, section, it's procedures. How we came up with that similar amendment earlier, or y'all did? As it relates to target any person based on the actual or perceived race, color, religion, creed, just for the sake of continuity, putting that same language in that same section if we're going to talk about civil protections.
In which section?
The section we're discussing in the former slide, which was slide 17. I have 17 on mine, that says 45. But it's that language.
It's 45 of this presentation. It's one presentation that we've seen today with the downtown plan, it looks like.
No, but I'm on that same presentation and on slide 17, the one we were just talking about, as far as use based on a protected characteristic.
It's right there.
So that's the revision I want in it, but the slide is
Right. My only feedback.
the one before.
Right, my only feedback from a policy perspective is it's redundant. Our policies are already very long, and so.
Okay, I get that.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop you there, respectfully. If we are going to use language in policies and include explicit provisions about protections, redundancy is not of my concern. I just want to make sure that we are putting those same protections in every portion if we're going to mention it. And in this particular subsection, we mentioned protections. So for the sake of continuity, it's just putting it there. I don't see why that would be a big issue.
Well, I think this is just explaining consequences instead of details.
Okay, so if
as
we
to what
wanted
it
to
is.
maybe cite the section as far as the
Okay, that-
protections,
that
then
I
let's
deal
do
with.
that,
We can
but
cite
I
that.
want
Cite
it
the
in there.
section.
That'd be
Can
better.
we cite that, please? Okay.
Yeah, cite the
So
section.
you want me to cite number 3 in the next slide?
Wherever it
To
needs
the,
to go.
site number 3 to the previous.
Okay.
So on
slide
y'all's
number 3.
policy, I have section 4A, subsection 1, under procedures, is where we initially have those new amended protections.
Right,
If we
yeah.
want to cite that,
Right.
that's fine.
Got it.
We're good.
Okay, All right.
Continue on.
got it. All right, I'm gonna move on. One more, Hayden? One more, all right. This, we're about done, actually. The San Marcos Police Department recognizes that residents and/or commercial businesses may want to purchase privately owned systems. I took out the reference to link them to the SMPD net. I didn't even know what that meant, so I took that out. And then all private system access must be approved by me. And then all data received by SMPD shall be subject to all provisions of this policy. and then we are not responsible for any costs associated. So those are the recommendations.
Quick question, are these commercial business or residents, are they held to the same kind of judicial consequences as other departments are in case they try to look at something
Good
without?
question.
So it's important to note, and Kristen, I'm cueing you, it's important to note when a person actually logs in, all they see is the vehicle and the license plate. They don't get any identifying information. That information comes from a different system that a citizen has no access to. And so Kristen, clean up on all 6?
Yes, that is correct. And I believe Chief mentioned it at the very beginning of his presentation, but with the private entities, the commercial and neighborhoods who have our cameras, our law enforcement customers may access their data if they are granted such permissions. However, it's one-way sharing. The private entities will not have access to any law enforcement camera data.
Okay, thank you.
All right, good question.
Everybody good with that?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, because on the next slide, when it gets into the hot lists and how the PD may receive hot lists, so in this scenario, is it only if the privately owned camera is linked to our system that we would then receive the hot list alerts?
That's correct, yes.
And I'm correct to assume that only we have the ability to actually put things into that list, not private citizens?
Tag, Kristen?
Yep. So the private entities may create a list of their own. However, it is up to the department whether or not they elect to receive alerts created by a private entity.
That's concerning. I mean, it seems like the hot list has safeguards for our police department. Those safeguards, I assume, don't follow citizens.
And the private entities would not, I mean, there is, they don't have any enforcement power, right? They're just, it may be something where there is a vehicle that they had been trespassing on their property, and so they have created a list identifying that vehicle of concern. And again, whether or not the department wants to receive an alert regarding that vehicle is up to the department.
Because in that example, how would you substantiate it?
Well, in that case, it'd be somebody calling in like they would now to say, I want to report XYZ, right?
So
But that's different than a hot list.
Right, so I know where you're going. So I'm not going to identify any businesses, but there are 2 very, very, very large businesses in San Marcos that have these cameras. And they are targets routinely of organized theft and violent crimes. I could very much see them entering a hot list alert related to a vehicle who has been responsible for various thefts, organized thefts, or maybe even an assault of a staff member. They could put that in their hot list. If we got that, that doesn't really give us anything other than an
Full
alert.
context.
Right, it may give us reasonable suspicion, but it sure doesn't establish probable cause. So the officers are gonna always have to default. It's like if you called in and said, hey, this person in front of me is driving drunk. You can't give me probable cause. I have to establish my own probable cause. So there's already safeguards built into it when the officer receives it.
I guess the reason I'm concerned is because, like, I saw in the policy that when an officer gets a ding of something being on the hot list, I think per the policy, if they feel it's necessary to wait for another officer or 2 to come, they can do that. It's recommended for safety purposes. If I have, let's say somebody just wanted to be retaliatory to me. Maybe I got fired, I said F you to my boss, I work at one of those 2 big companies, and as a retaliatory measure, they put my name on this hot list. What would happen in a scenario like that? Like, how would an officer be able to determine probable cause if they're just driving and it gets a ding? Do they pull over all dings? Or?
No, in that exact scenario, the officer probably would do nothing with it because they're getting the information, the alert, from an apartment complex. We're not going to do anything with that.
Okay, so the list an officer can differentiate
Where it comes from?
versus a private and a,
Yes,
okay.
oh, yes,
okay,
yes,
that's
yes,
my
yes,
question.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Hayden? All right, we will come back to you. I promise that I will have the MOU revised and to you all probably by end of this week. And then I'll come back and see you on April 1st with the request that we amend the flock camera to include all 33 cameras. Just a fiscal note, those 33 cameras, the additional cameras are being, the 19 of them purchased using a grant, and the 20% match is being used through seized funds.
Right.
So our citizens should know there's no impact to the general fund in fiscal '25.
And we will also make the policy amendments. I'm
I have a
sorry, Mr.
question.
Scott.
Yeah, are we holding up anything by not approving that now?
We've
Yes,
already
sir.
held it up.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what are the consequences again if we just don't go ahead and approve it now?
Well,
Well, we can't approve
It's not
it
an
now.
item
It's
for
not on the
yeah,
action.
it's
agenda.
not
Right,
agendized.
it's
Oh,
not
okay.
posted.
Okay.
You have any questions for me? Next slide.
Anybody? Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Mayor,
And as
Council.
always, thanks to everyone who pulls the information together for us, so we
Thank you.
appreciate that. Next is our executive session. Ms. Trevino.
The city council will convene an executive session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Government Code. A, Section 551.087, Economic Development, to deliberate possible economic development incentives for Project Cat Tree. And B, Section 551.072, Real Property, to deliberate the possible acquisition of land for expansion of the Upper Purgatory Creek Natural Area.
Looking for a motion?
So moved. A second?
Motion to Mr. Scott, seconded to Mr. Mendoza. We'll vote.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mr. Saul Gonzalez? Ms. Garza? Mayor Houston?
Aye.
Mr. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Mendoza?
Aye.
And Mr. Lorenzo Gonzalez.
Okay, we will go into executive session at 5:11. Turned from our executive session, which we ended at 5:56. Ms. Trevino, I don't believe anyone signed up for Q&A, correct?
No, ma'am.
Okay, in that case, with all of our business on that agenda being done, I will adjourn us at 5:58. We will take a very short break.